Story 5. Honestly, I am more curious about why people stay in relationships early on when they realize one partner wants children and the other does not. I was clear from the start that I had never and would never want children. 10 years later, we broke up when I was 29 for a number of reasons. One of them was that he thought I would change my mind about having children, and I absolutely would not. It was awful at first, but it passed, and now I am living my best life. I met someone else at 33, married at 35, and made it clear from day one that I do not want children. Honestly, ages 29 through 33 were the best single years of my life. Story 7. He wanted children. I did not. The relationship was okay. We ended it and remained friends. Later, I met my husband because he asked whether I wanted children right on our first date. I did not want to waste my time a second time, and we have now been together for over 20 years. Story 8. I dated a man I thought was the one. I met him just as I was turning 30. It was the kind of connection where you meet on a first date and your whole body said yes. It felt so right. The relationship was fantastic. The only difference was that he was on the fence and I knew I wanted to be a mother my whole life. It was my number one life dream. We set a timeline for him to decide. Hello? Biological clock. We talked about it a lot, and he ultimately decided he did not want children, or at least was unsure enough that it amounted to not wanting them. Our breakup was one of the hardest things I have ever gone through. I cried over it for years and thought I would never get over it. 3 years have passed. I froze my eggs and did a lot of fun single life things. We stayed friends, or at least we now root for each other from afar. I have met the man I will have children with and build a life with. He is everything I thought I wanted and more. What I have learned is that you can have incredible chemistry with someone, but there are very few people you can build a life with on top of that. That is your person, and it is worth every second of heartbreak to find them. I have so much love for that ex who was part of my story of finding my now partner. I am so excited about a life I do not have to settle for and that I get to live. If you are the original poster and are trying to make an excruciating decision and need an ear, feel free to send me a direct message. Wishing you all the very best. Story 9. This happened to me about 3 weeks ago. He wanted children. I told him throughout our entire relationship that I did not. He finally realized he could not change my mind, so he moved out and completely ghosted me in 2 days. I miss him and what we had. He admitted to leading me on, and it is still fresh enough that I am angry about it, but I am working through my healing process. Mutual friends say he is not doing well. Story 10. A family friend married at 23. She wanted children, he did not. She decided to stay. They divorced when she was 48 because of years of built-up anger and resentment. Now 55, she greatly regrets her choice to stay. She loved him, but the resentment won out. Seeing nieces and nephews and friends celebrate milestones such as finishing university, turning 18, going on adult family holidays, and children getting engaged became too painful for her. Story 11. My answer might be controversial because I regret becoming a parent, and most people do not like to admit that publicly. I was the one who ended up wanting children. My partner at the time was not interested. For a long time, I did not know what I wanted. As I got older, I thought I wanted to be a mother. I felt my clock ticking and I saw friends having children, so we had that difficult conversation and we ended the relationship. It was an extremely painful breakup. I lost my best friend and my soulmate. At the time, it felt like the right decision. I met someone new later and I thought I could build a life with that person. We went on to have our first child and I felt regret. I stayed because I had ended a wonderful relationship to become a mother, so I decided to stick with it. My husband and I now have 2 children. I love my children and I try to be the best parent I can be, but I am not happy. My husband and I do not have the relationship I had with my ex. I do not feel fulfilled as a parent in the way I thought I would. Instead, I am exhausted all the time and I have no freedom or sense of identity. My body was changed by difficult pregnancies and childbirth. I do not have the support I need from my husband or from either of our families. My husband is doing his best. He works all the time to make ends meet, but that connection simply is not there. Dee and I feel like roommates raising 2 children. I feel incredibly lonely. I worry that my biological clock affected my judgment and made me end a relationship I should have stayed in. Now that I have had children, I regret it. I do not have any contact with my ex because I feel too guilty to reach out. I do not know if he would want to be with me now that I have two children. I do not want to hurt the father of my children or my children. I wish I could go back in time and stay where I was happy. I often daydream about how life would be now if things had been different. I now tell people to really think before acting on impulse. You cannot undo having children, and you owe it to them to be the best parent you can be. My selfish wish is that I could go back in time and not do any of this. You can build a life with many people, but a true soul connection is once in a lifetime. I wish you the best. Original poster. Story 12. It ended with a lot of sadness but no bitterness. We realized that wanting children is a core, non-negotiable difference. It's better to have a painful, clean break than to let resentment slowly build up over the years. Story 13. When I was 28 years old, my girlfriend, who was 29, ended the relationship because she wanted children and I did not. I am sorry we did not get married, but it was good to resolve that early. We had been together almost 2 years. I think of her often, but I am not sorry I did not have children. We did not stay in touch, and I wish her all the best wherever she is. Story 14. I wanted to get married and have children, but he did not, so I broke it off. I am still single 4 years later. He got married and had a child a month ago. It is painful, but I have to accept that he was not emotionally mature enough at the time, or perhaps he was not sure about me and how our lives would fit together. I had some doubts too. I am still hopeful that I will find the right person, or that I will become a foster mother. He seems happy to be a father. Story 15. The man I dated just before my husband was like this. He was a good man and had clear goals in life. He told me he wanted to be a father. I did not want children. We broke up. He is now happily married, and so am I. He has 3 children with a wonderful woman. They own a home, he has a good job, and he is happy. I wish him the best. We were simply not meant to be. Story 16. This happened to me at 37. I was with my partner of 9 years when he suddenly changed his mind about wanting children, so I made the hard decision to leave. I was afraid I would regret staying and come to resent him if I sacrificed the future I wanted. A few months later, I met a man who wanted the same things I wanted. Story 17. The reverse happened for me. I have never wanted children. My ex did. She did not think I was serious until I got a vasectomy. We are still friends and hold each other in high regard, but we both agreed we should have ended the relationship earlier. Aside from the disagreement about children, our relationship was great. She is from a small town and could not imagine why someone would not want a family of their own. Story 18. I was with someone for 3 years. I had never wanted children. He was unsure or indifferent during that time. At the end, I wanted to leave the city we were living in. He did not, and he decided he wanted children while I did not. I am now very happily married to someone who also does not want children, and we have been together 10 years. My ex is married to a lovely woman whom we were both friends with when we were together, and she is a much better match for him than I was. They have 2 boys and are happy. Story 19. The opposite happened. I feel like an idiot because I thought I was right. Turns out no one was right. To each their own. Story 20. I was the one who did not want children. It was sad, but I knew it was the right choice and I do not regret it. Their new partner became pregnant within a year. Story 21. Someone broke up with me many years ago after 2 years of being adamant she did not want children. That was fine because I did not want them either. We had discussed it before we met and she confirmed it fully on our first date. It later turned out she had been hoping I would change my mind, and she left when I did not. It worked out for the best because I would not have been a good parent and I did not want to put a child in that situation. Story 22. We tried maybe you'll change your mind for way too long. Spoiler, he didn't. I realized I was waiting for a future that wasn't coming, so I chose myself. I'm still proud of that girl. Story 23. I did not, but a friend of mine did. She wanted children and her former partner did not. They were perfect together. But she knew she would regret giving in and not having children later in life, so she left to try for a family. A year or two later, she had a medical emergency that required a hysterectomy, so now she cannot have children. She is in her 50s and still says she would have loved to have children, but she did not. As much as she loved him, in the long run she believes she would have come to resent him, even though he was perfect for her in every other way. Story 24. This is my biggest fear. I have been dating the love of my life for a year, my childhood best friend, whom I have loved from the first moment I saw him. There were many twists and turns to get us here, and I am so happy that we are together. I know he is the one. The only thing I can imagine breaking us up is the issue of having children. We are both undecided. He is leaning toward no, and I am truly neutral. We are both young, and I have always loved children and work with them, so I wonder if, when the biological clock hits, I will want to have children. I hope not. I hope I do not have to choose between him and children. I think I might choose him, but I just do not know. I have to trust that what is meant to be will be. If anyone has advice, please share. Story 25. I should have ended it years sooner and not wasted her time or mine. It ended relatively well. We kissed farewell when it was finally over. We talk once a year just to check in. Story 26. I met my ex-husband when I was 23 and he was 28. I am now 29 and he is 34. We had a loving relationship with the normal struggles couples have. I was dealing with mental health issues that were more serious than I realized, while working a demanding job and saving for a wedding and a house. We married last October in an extremely small ceremony. We both wanted to elope, but our families begged to be there. We bought a house and started renovating earlier this year, and that is when we fell apart. I was always adamant about not wanting children, and I believed he felt the same, but he was really just okay with not having them, which is a very different thing. We had previously lived in a one-bedroom, one-bathroom condo for 4 years, but moving into a big home that would be perfect for a family, and watching many friends start families, he began to feel a fear of missing out and did, in fact, want children. The split was about as amicable as such things go. He kept the house and bought me out, and I moved into an apartment down the street because there were not many rentals in our city. We hang out. I help him with his dog. Now that it has been 6 months since we split, the veil has lifted and I can see that had we stayed together without children, we might have been happy, but there were several issues we would have had to work through. I will always love him, but I am not in love with him anymore, and he has a lot of growing up to do before he becomes a father. I am glad I stuck to my decision. I get to live alone for the first time and have realized that I did not contribute as many problems to our relationship as I had been led to believe, and I think he now realizes how large a burden I carried. Story 27. I left a 14-year marriage because my wife did not want children. I remarried a wonderful woman who also wanted a family, but she could not get pregnant. We adopted 2 children and have raised them into 2 wonderful young women. My ex and I have drifted apart. It was difficult at first, but we now only check in on each other's aging parents. Story 28. After my divorce, I dated a younger man who said he was child-free. Almost a year into our relationship, I had my tubes removed, and his mental health declined precipitously. Being around my children made him realize he wanted his own children, and confronting a life without that option left him depressed. Story 29. When I was 30, I wanted children and he did not. I ended the relationship, and now at 38 I have a partner and a child. It was the best thing I ever did. During the relationship, it was always in the back of my mind that we had different life goals. I was also worried that if I accidentally became pregnant, I would hate for the child's father not to want them. Story 30. I wanted children and marriage. He couldn't get off the fence. After years together, I decided that I don't know meant no. 7 years later, I am happily married, pregnant, and thankful I did not let fear of the unknown keep me in a relationship that was not fulfilling. Leaving was hard, but looking back and thinking about where I am now is like comparing 2 different lifetimes. The most important thing I learned is how wonderful it is to be with someone who enthusiastically wants the same things in life. Story 31. We split up in our late 20s. He was my best friend, and I was not going to be the one to stop him from having the family and life he wanted. He is now happily engaged to a woman who wants the same things he does, and I am happily single with cats. I have found it harder to find someone suitable to date in their 30s, as people are in their prime family starting years or already have children. Story 32. I did not want children. I was with her for about 3 years. After that, I made it a point not to date anyone who wanted children. We both thought the other might change their mind, and I did not want to go through that again. Lesson learned. She was a very good partner otherwise. Story 33. I realized I would resent him later, and he would resent me if I pushed him. So we chose to love each other enough to walk away. Still aches, but it was the right decision. Story 34. We met, and she told me emphatically that she did not want children ever. I, a man, entered the relationship with 2 young children of my own, which worried me at first. She accepted them and treated them very well. She showered them with love and was like a best friend to them. They truly loved her. We married and included them in the wedding ceremony. I was always open to having a child with her, and we discussed it a few times. Ultimately, she said she did not feel stable enough to be a mother herself and was happy with what we had. Fast forward 8 years, and she suddenly wanted a child. Okay, let's do this. We began to plan how that would look for our lives and started preparing a room and so on. We even talked about names. She desperately hoped for a girl. A few months later, she divorced me for a man she had just met because she said I never seemed really interested in having a child with her. 3 years later, she is now married to that man and they are expecting. It was a hard lesson that not everyone is honest and some people are out for themselves. She has not spoken to my children even once since she left in 2022, which will be damaging for them. Story 35. I apologize for that. We were young and had agreed to always stay friends, thinking we would end up back together once we'd lived our lives. I always wanted children and he wasn't ready for that, but we desperately loved each other. He was killed by a driver who wasn't looking where he was going. We were in our late 20s. For the longest time, I regretted our decision. I still mourn him and always will. One of my children has his name as their middle name. Thankfully, I have known my partner since childhood, so he has always known and it is not an issue. I eventually got everything we had planned, the love and happiness, and he got nothing. Story 36. I loved him so much, but every time we talked about the future, it felt like I was packing away a version of myself just to keep the relationship alive. Leaving hurt, but staying would have slowly hollowed me out. Story 37. I started to write out the whole story, but I will give a short summary instead. We met in our 20s. Neither of us knew what we wanted, and that was fine. 3 years later, I realized I was ready for marriage and children. He pretended to be on the same page, then began to stall. In our 30s, he tried to run out my biological clock. He wanted to be with me but not have children, and he knew that if he told me I would leave. By the time I realized what he was doing, I thought I was too old to leave and find someone else in time to have children. I could not imagine dating or sleeping with anyone else. I could not afford to be a single mother. I did therapy. I tried to make my peace with being childless. I tried to follow my therapist's advice to focus on my real long-term relationship instead of hypothetical children. That was bad advice. The right advice is to figure out which you want more, your partner or children. You cannot have both. Proceed accordingly. How it ended. I was given the chance to adopt a newborn when I was 45. He blocked the home study. That was the day I was done, though realistically the relationship was over the day I was ready to start trying for children and he started stalling, after 6 years together when I was 31. Took a while. I received a giant, life-changing promotion at work and gained financial freedom. I broke up with him and lost all the weight I had gained being miserable for 15 years. I am fixing up my old family home now. I am going to become a foster and adoptive mother. I never stopped wanting to parent. I simply did not have the ability earlier in life to do it alone. Our 30s were awful for both of us. We fought privately and publicly. We were that couple no one wanted to be around. Our fights grew increasingly nasty. Our relationship turned toxic, and literally the only thing we fought over was children and settling down. I think he assumed that once my biological clock ran out I would get over it. I did not. In the end, we wasted the best years of each other's lives. I think about it and regret it every single day. Not getting to be pregnant and have babies in the normal time frame is the biggest regret of my life. My parents are gone now. They would have been so excited to be grandparents, even if only temporarily to foster children who eventually returned home. They both loved kids. If you are in this position, think long and hard. If the person who wants children is on the fence or might want them, maybe you can work it out. Maybe they will decide they want the relationship more than children. But if the person who wants children truly and desperately wants them, and the other person is a hard no, the relationship is already over. Eventually, anger and resentment will destroy it, and it will no longer be an otherwise great loving relationship. It may be too late for the person who wants children to pursue them. Love them enough to let them go, or love yourself enough to leave and find the life you want. Or both. Story 38. I realized that having a loving partner is more important than having children, to be honest. These were the words of my uncle. Story 39. I went through this at 25. He was 27. We dated for 6 months. It was a great relationship, but we both realized we could not change one another's minds on this topic. After we broke up, we remained friends. We are not as close now, but I hold him in high regard. Now I am in my 30s and in a happy, healthy relationship with a partner who also wants children. Story 40. He wanted children and I did not. We were together for 7 years. At the beginning, I was 31 at the time. He was 1 year older. I was not sure whether I wanted children because all my friends were getting married and having kids. I thought I had missed the memo and that maybe eventually I would want to get married and have children too. But that did not happen. Things kept dragging on and our relationship never moved forward. For example, moving in together, combining finances, and so on. I felt that if I did take those steps, he would pressure me into marriage and pregnancy, because it seemed easy to move to the next step. The breaking point came 2 years into the pandemic when he wanted to buy a house in a very high cost of living area in Canada and I did not. Financially, I did not see the point. It would have required more time and money for renovations and maintenance, and higher taxes and heating and cooling costs. It did not make sense for him to buy a house while I would still be living in my condo. If he were to afford that place, I would have had to sell my place and buy a home with him. He ended up not buying anything and we broke up a few months later. It made me realize we had different life goals. It is not going to work if your partner's goals differ from yours. You will never be happy living a life that does not match how you envision it. Now I am single and the first thing I ask men is whether they want children, along with other questions to see if our lifestyles and goals are compatible. Story 41. People in this thread who thought their partner would change their mind and caused heartbreak and destruction are selfish. Story 42. It hurt deeply at first, but I found someone aligned with me later. Story 43. A good friend of mine went through this. She and her partner had a lot in common and dated for 3 years. From the beginning, they knew they had different views on having children. She wanted children and he did not. They decided to postpone the decision and see what would happen. That approach can work when you are young, such as in your teens or early 20s, but they were 28 when they started dating. They ultimately broke up because of the disagreement about children. Now my friend is scrambling to settle down. She is finally dating someone who seems promising after a few relationships that did not work out. They have to move on an accelerated timeline because they are 36 and want to get married first. I hope it works out because I think she would make a great mother. Story 44. When I was young, my ex broke up with me because I did not want children, even if we got married. Now I am happily married to a woman who shares my view. We have been together for 10 years and do not have children. Story 45. The opposite happened to me. I did not want them, but he did. It was not easy, but we ended on fairly amicable terms. We do not talk now because he is very traditional and does not feel it would be right to continue, which is fine. Story 46. It is not me, but my current boyfriend. He and his wife had both wanted children originally, but they were trying to get through life first because he was going to college late and somehow a decade passed. During the pandemic, his much younger sister moved in with them. She is lovely but loud and boisterous. and that made his wife realize that her misophonia would make having children a nightmare. They tried couples therapy, but eventually realized this was a non-negotiable issue for both of them, so they split up when he was about 40. They are still friends and are still processing it. She is in a new relationship and seems happy. He had a couple of relationships before mine, and those breakups were stressful for him because he felt the clock was ticking and worried he had given up a good relationship for something that would not work out. I had several relationships where we both wanted children, and I ended them because I did not think the other person was ready to parent. For example, they had unresolved trauma that affected how they interacted with people and refused to go to therapy, they had anger issues, or they were not capable of taking care of themselves, let alone a baby. I had never been with someone who simply did not want children. Now we are older and feel the window is closing, so we are moving faster than I would otherwise, but we have been very communicative and thoughtful, and it has been wonderful to be on the same page and work toward the same goal. I think that unless someone is the absolute love of your life, separation is the right choice because they most likely will not change their mind and neither will you. You will always have given up something you wanted, which breeds resentment. Unless it is truly worth it, it is not worth it. Story 47. I did not want children, but I love my wife. She would not have been happy without them, and I could not deny her something that mattered most. So I went through with it, and now we have 2 children. They are really hard work, and I sometimes fantasize about a life without them. If I could go back in time, would I do it differently? No. They bring so much love into our lives, and I would feel emptier without them. Everyone is different, and sometimes you have to gamble on what you think is right. Story 48. I have known male friends who changed their minds as they got older, which was really awful for the partners who were then dumped. I have also seen the reverse, where a wife said she wanted children and then changed her mind after marriage, leaving the husband devastated. He stayed in the relationship but seemed to be slipping into alcoholism and was very miserable. It is a tough situation. I am glad to read about people who managed to split amicably and both ended up happier. Story 49. I've been very clear about not wanting children. I've been with my boyfriend almost 5 years. We're getting a mortgage together, and that made him finally think about having children properly. He was always neither here nor there about wanting them, but I was firmly a no. He was acting distant for about a week. I finally asked him what was wrong, and he said he had been thinking about having children. It was a difficult conversation, and I mostly listened. Then he became ill, so we left the subject alone. A week later, he said he had decided that he did not want children. I was extremely grateful. I know it would have been very hard if he wanted children, because it is something I cannot compromise on. It was a very anxious week. At the same time, it is nice to hear positive stories of people who have ended relationships but are still happy with their lives. Story 50. I never ended up in a situation where I could have children or adopt after leaving. There were many tears for a while, but it was the right decision for other reasons and things are good. Story 51. I was 27 at the time. We had intense chemistry and a strong mental connection. We understood each other very well. I do not want children, though I had been vague about possibly fostering or having non-biological children later in life. He wanted children and specifically wanted to foster, but he realized that the system where we live would discriminate against him. After that realization, he decided that he, as a transmasculine person, would have the children himself if necessary. The relationship ended with both of us acknowledging that it was over, which was very painful despite its short duration. I know it was the right choice even though it still hurts. I firmly believe I will find someone who shares my vision of the future, and my ex will too. You will as well. Do not make this compromise. Breaking up hurts, but it would hurt more to give up the chance of having the life you want. Story 52. Leaving that relationship was far better than staying with someone who might agree to have children with you but would be an absent, neglectful father. I left and was sad for a while. 4 years later, I met someone who also wants children. We are still trying to conceive, but we are on the same page. Story 53. She wanted to focus on her career as a lawyer and did not want children, whereas I wanted children and to start a family. Unfortunately, we could not agree and broke it off. I am happily married now with newborn triplets, and I could not ask for a more wonderful wife. Story 54. My ex wanted them. I don't think I did. I did not want her to change what she wanted and miss out on something she might need, even though she said she was unsure. I think about her almost every day, and I am starting therapy to work some things out. Maybe we will end up back together, maybe not. I just want her to be happy and with the right person. Story 55. He told me he never saw himself as a dad, and I knew I'd always pictured myself as a mom. I couldn't betray that version of me for anyone, even him. Story 56. We were together for 8 years. I always thought I would come around to the idea of having children because I loved him, but after other people in our lives had children and I spent more time around babies and children, it just confirmed I did not want them. I have been single ever since, struggling to find a man who does not want children. Story 57. I met my husband about 9 months later, and 3 years after that I became a mother. We are very happy and now own our home. We spent about an hour persuading our 3-year-old that sleep was a good idea. Could not have worked out better. Story 58. I was the one who changed my mind and wanted children. We had been dating for about 5 years at that point. She did not, and we argued about it for 2 years before breaking up. The breakup lasted 6 months when I got an email from her saying that she had done a lot of thinking and realized she had grown during our relationship and would be a good mother. She came from a troubled household. She wrote that if I was still available, she wanted to be a parent with me. We married about 2 years later because of coronavirus disease 2019, and now, 4 years after that, we are expecting our first and only child in a few weeks. I am definitely in the minority, but we are very happy together and excited to be parents. The breakup was the hardest thing I have ever been through, and I feel like the luckiest person to have her back and to be embarking on this journey with her. Typically does not work out like it did for me. It is absolutely an irreconcilable difference, and everyone told us to break up, and they were right. Being apart from me allowed her to realize that the strength she had gained from our relationship was her own and not dependent on me. I am extremely lucky to have her, and she will be an amazing mother. Story 59. I am female and currently facing a possible breakup because I do not want children and he does. It is incredibly difficult. I was single for a long time before him, and I do not believe I will find someone like him again. But how certain am I that I do not want children? How do you figure that out? I know many people have a profound desire to be parents, and I do not share that, but I have no idea whether a life without children will make me happier than a life with them. Story 60. I did not want children, marriage, or to stay in our hometown. He did. I wanted sex and cohabitation. He did not. We broke up but remained friends. There were multiple issues, but children were the main reason for the breakup. I later married and had a child less than 3 years later. I eventually moved back to my hometown. Getting away from my parents and being in a healthy, stable relationship made me feel safe enough to consider children. He married 10 years later and had a baby soon after. We were both good people doing our best, but we needed different things in a partner. Story 61. He had 3 children from his first marriage, and when we first got together he was willing to have 1 or 2 more with me. As time went on, it kept being postponed for one reason or another, some legitimate and some stalling on his part. Then his teenage daughter became pregnant. After her baby was born, he refused to have any more children, even though he was away for work, and I did all the heavy lifting to make sure his daughter and the baby had what they needed. He did me a favor by leaving. 13 years later, I am happily married to a wonderful man who came with a bonus son, and we have a son and a daughter together. Story 62. I was with my boyfriend for 10 years, from age 20 to 30. I broke up with him at 30 because he did not want to get married or have children. I never found another relationship. I am 42 now and very depressed because I feel I will be alone now and in the future. I am an only child with no family. This is very painful. Story 63. It was the hardest breakup of my life, but the best decision for both of us. We cried for days, but we knew resentment would eventually destroy us if one of us had compromised. 5 years later, I am married to a wonderful partner and we have a toddler. My ex is traveling the world and living his best child-free life. We are both living the lives we wanted. Love is not always enough to make a life work. Story 64. I have one child and another on the way. I am glad it worked out, because I always wanted children and think I would have ended up resenting her for not wanting them. Story 65. The relationship reached a point where marriage seemed possible, so we began talking more seriously about what we wanted. I knew she had a difficult, abusive childhood that made her question what kind of mother she would be, but I had not realized how firmly she did not want to be a parent. She had not realized how important having children was to me. We discussed it at length. She even convinced me to see a couples counselor with her, but I opted out after one session when the counselor asked me to examine why I felt the need for children, as if it were a pathology I could overcome. We broke up on hurtful, uncomfortable terms. I moved on and have been married for 27 years with 5 children. My former fiancé, with whom I never spoke again, married a divorced man who already had grown children and was presumably not interested in having more. I wish her well and hope she is content. Story 66. I didn't want children. We were together for 11 years. He cheated instead of having a discussion about it. He said he thought I would change my mind. Then he stole my dog, married the woman he cheated with, and they have at least one child. I know I dodged the biggest bullet, but it still hurts. Story 67. We ended up back together, and we now have a 7-month-old baby boy. Story 68. This may not be relevant to the original poster story, but I had an older friend who divorced his wife because he wanted children and she did not. I do not know why or how they married without deciding what they wanted to do. But it happens. Maybe one of them changed their mind. She later married someone else and had children. My friend is an attractive lawyer who now dates people in their 20s and 30s, travels a lot, and seems to be having a great time. Until a few years ago, he still called his ex-wife on her birthday to wish her a happy birthday. You just do not know how life will work out, I guess. Story 69. Someone ended a relationship with me at 22 because I did not want children and he did. I was fairly sure, but I told him I was only 22. I am glad now. I met my husband soon after and told him immediately that I did not want children. He was fine with it. We have been together for 15 years and have 2 dogs, who are a million times better than children. I would be interested to know whether my ex has children now. Story 70. Neither of us wanted children. I accidentally became pregnant 3 years into the relationship. We thought about giving him up for adoption, but when we held him for the first time, we knew our lives would never be the same, for better or worse. Fast forward 3 more years, and we decided to have a second child. There was a lot of support from the grandparents and great-grandparents. Without them, we would not have survived as a couple. We have been happily together for 25 years, and our children are grown. Story 71. A family member did this. They had a very good marriage, but he did not want children and she did. There is more to the story, but it has been more than 30 years and he still regrets it. Story 72. This is basic communication in relationships. Be honest about your core values so you do not end a relationship because of misalignment. It is not hard. Story 73. It was difficult because we loved each other but wanted different things. We parted on good terms, and we each went our separate ways. Story 74. This is a different situation but very similar. I'm a young single mom of 2, and I met someone online who knew that. I grew a connection with him. He wanted children in his past relationship and marriage, and he assumed that was what he wanted moving forward. I also wanted someone who shared similar values, ideals, and goals, so of course I fell in love with him. At the time, he felt like my soulmate. I felt so utterly in love that it hurt, and he made me very happy. Then, after dating for a few months and meeting in person, he changed. His dog, which he had shared with his ex, died, and I like to think that this made him realize the life I was offering was not what he wanted anymore. He wanted that life with his ex, not with me. After countless therapy appointments, being led on, and things not working out, we parted ways when it became clear he did not want children, did not want this life, and was not interested in marriage. Sometimes I still think of him. We had amazing chemistry, not sexual because our drives did not match, but our emotional chemistry was intense. We could talk for hours or laugh about something silly we both found funny. I won't forget those long phone calls and the jokes we made. I do hope he finds what he's looking for, and I think it worked out in the end for both of us. Story 75. I have two children under 4. I am 40 years old, and I am married to the love of my life. I would say things worked out. Story 76. My brother-in-law divorced his wife and remarried within a year. He is now expecting his second child. Story 77. I recently ended a relationship, and it has caused me more heartbreak than I have ever felt. This thread has really helped me, so thank you, everyone. Story 78. My ex-wife and I had tried for years to have a baby. She finally became pregnant but miscarried. Around the same time, her father passed away and her mother moved into a care facility. She spent time healing and did not want to try again. We separated a year later after 15 years together. Fast forward 5 years. I was about to turn 40, had been with my high school crush for 4 years, and little Rory was about to turn 1. Fatherhood has been everything I ever wanted and more. My ex-wife eventually healed, found a nice partner, and recently gave birth to a baby girl. Life can be great. Story 79. I was engaged to a woman who acted irrationally in the last few months before the wedding. I had been clear that I wanted children. It was in my dating profile when we met. We discussed having 2 or 3 children, potential names, and where we would eventually buy a house. My house had poor schools, which I had not considered when I bought it as a single man. A couple of weeks before the wedding, she said she never wanted children and claimed I had forced her hand. I was stunned. I was naive then. She may have had borderline personality disorder. Even if not, there were signs this was a bad match. She told lies and convinced herself they were true. For example, once I paid for a meal with friends and she was angry, saying it seemed like she was using me for money. I told her to pay next time, but when I gave her the bill at the next meal, she was angry because she thought a man should pay. I always felt like I was walking on eggshells, trying not to make her angry. She called off the wedding over the child issue and other petty things. She even lied to her parents, saying I was the one who broke it off. I was angry then, but not anymore. I think she realized she was not well and did not want to bring children into that situation, and she probably did not want to trap me in a marriage without children or with ongoing problems. Although I was angry for years, I no longer hate her. I prefer to believe she ended the relationship because she recognized it would make my life miserable. It worked out for me. I married my soulmate, and we have 2 children. Life is good. It has been 15 years since we spoke. I do not believe she ever married or had children. She is 45 now, so that ship has probably sailed. I have no desire to speak to her again, but I wish her the best. Story 80. My story is slightly unusual. I ended a relationship in my mid-20s because I was adamant I did not want children. He was my first love and we were very happy together. Everyone thought we were the perfect couple. When they found out we had broken up, many people told me I would regret it and that it was the biggest mistake of my life. He wanted to be a father. Even in his early 20s, it was very important to him, and I loved him enough not to stand in the way. He met someone within 6 months and went on to have 2 children. 3 years later, I met someone who said he did not want children. We got married and were very happy. Then, in my mid-30s, I realized I wanted to be a mother. My husband was surprised, knowing I had ended a previous relationship over not wanting children and that we had been together 6 years with no indication I would ever change my mind. We have a little boy now. He is a toddler and the best decision we ever made. I cannot imagine my life without him, and my only regret is not having him sooner. Story 81. My uncle by marriage had been married for 10 years before he realized his first wife did not want to slow down as a performer or have children. They divorced. He later married my aunt, who had never been married, had changed careers, and had returned to school. They had 2 children in their early 40s, while my wife and I had children in our early 20s. They were often exhausted but happy. I do not think anyone would plan it that way, but the children grew up in a very stable home and it shows. Having 2 parents with established careers, a paid mortgage, and a life together before their children were born, parents who had been waiting for decades to have children, really makes a difference. Story 82. I, age 32, Did not realize I wanted a family until I had a chemical pregnancy. My ex-boyfriend, age 35, with whom I had been for 16 years, responded good. I left him and found my current partner, whom I have been with for 2 years. We do not have children yet, but he is excited to be a parent one day. Story 83. She has twins and I have my own dog. We are both doing well now. Story 84. Honestly, it was probably one of the hardest things I ever did, but I would not change anything. As far as I know, she is happily married, and I am too, with 2 boys. I would be living a totally different life if I had never made that choice, and I probably would not be nearly as happy, even if my oldest is a Johnny Knoxville reincarnation. Story 85. He told me he always wanted children but kept putting it off. When I had a pregnancy that ended in a miscarriage, he told my mother he hoped it would be my wake-up call to never want children. I broke up with him not long after that. I met someone else and became pregnant right away. It did not work out with them, so I am a single mother, and honestly I prefer it that way. I do not have the drama or stress of the other parent not pulling their weight. Story 86. I did not want children at all. He wanted a family, so we split. The universe has a sense of humor. I married a man who had children from his first marriage, and it worked out. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.